Samir, how are you? It's great to see you again.
Yeah, I'm very well, buddy. Very well. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad, I have to say. Now, Samir, we're going to talk engineering and race setup here, aren't we, from your data-driven? We've actually got a video to show. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I thought it would be nice just to package up what I had to say in a bit more of a succinct way. And so that, I thought it would be nice just to take people through a snapshot, a small masterclass in how you can use data to compare what a pro would do if they happen to drive your car.
Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't have led that in any better. Right, if we could get that video played, let's go.
So how much faster would a pro go in your racing car? Why? What is it that they are doing differently? How can you use data to understand that? And then how can you actually translate that back to using data when you don't have a pro in your own car? So earlier in the year, Scott Mansell, 750 Motor Club, and myself came together to put together this video on the true cost of racing. It's pretty popular. It's had over 140,000 views so far. You can grab it, you can watch it at the link below on the site. I shook down and tested the car on the Friday, and then Scott raced it on the weekend. So what was interesting was that we suddenly had a data set from an amateur, myself, and a professional driver in the same car. So I thought it would be really interesting to do a head-to-head and to take the data and see where, if we had this information, it's unusual to get it, how can we use that to understand and inform some of the theories and some of the practices around data analysis. We'll create this little head-to-head and we'll take you through it so you can see what is it that Scott is doing differently to me, and then how you can use those same techniques with your own data analysis. Just quickly, I'm Samir Abid, founder of Your Data Driven. I'm an engineer, vehicle dynamics engineer. I spent the first part of my career working for people at Aston Martin, Multimatic, Jaguar Land Rover, designing suspension and steering systems for road and racing cars. The more recent part of my career, I've actually spent in the world of sport and Olympic sport, and I've been helping those teams use data to make decisions. These days, I can be found back in the paddock, running the site, Your Data Driven. I've got a popular podcast that you might enjoy where I interview the best of the best in motorsport to get their views on what we can learn from professional motorsport and bring that back into club racing. There's some great guests on there, so I really recommend you take a listen to what they have to say. So this event took place at Snetterton, and what I want to do is present two little things for you. An overall comparison of what Scott did versus me, and then just an analysis of one corner so we can start to dig into the detail of what the data can tell you so that we can really form a plan for how to improve next time out. Because that's ultimately what we want to do, more systematically and precisely lower our lap times. So here we go. Let's get this out of the way. The fastest laps for the two drivers. One was red, one was blue. Who was it? There's only 1.3 seconds between them, so that's not too bad. Yeah, there's no real doubt. Scott was quicker than me, and that's it. The interesting thing, though, was what was it that made him quicker? Why was he quicker? So that's what we want to find out, and that's what we're going to look at. So first, the overall. This is the friction circle. The way in which this chart works is that feet up and down, hands left and right. And you can see there's a shape. It's if you squint a bit, there's a bit of an oval shape to it. And even if you don't know anything else, you just compare it to my data, you can see there's some differences there. And so before we go any further, you can see, okay, already there's some differences in the way in which these two drivers are using the grip. And if you, in fact, overlay one on top of the other, so that Scott's in the blue, you can see he's using maybe a little bit more brakes, and he, on a couple of places, he seems to be using a little bit more steering. Interesting, I seem to be using a little bit more, getting some better acceleration in a couple of places. So already there's some thoughts there on like, okay, what is it that we can learn from this overall? But what it's really showing you is that Scott, because his is much more on the edge more of the time, he's much more consistent than me. So Scott is more consistent, and in general, he's using more of the grip. So that's how you'd summarise this up. So he's using more grip more consistently. But how is he doing that? So let's have a look at this corner analysis. So here we go. I'm just going to look at turn one at Snetterton. we could just zoom in and just see exactly what's going on there. Now, if you're not familiar with turn 1, here is my onboard video from my car on this fast lap. Have a look as I go through the corner at the steering, and you'll see a slight correction halfway through. See if you can spot that, because it's really important, because it's something we'll see in the data in a minute. You'll see it. So that's going through the corner. So it did look pretty smooth, to be honest with you. You know, it didn't look too bad. Let's see actually what happened. So back to our overview. So the difference between that little section was 0.4 of a second. So Scott was 13.99 seconds to go from the start line round to that point where I finished the video. And I was 14.34. So that's quite a big difference in one corner. So what was going on, and why was he able to pull out so much time in just the one corner? So here is the speed trace. That's the top one. And so again, Scott's the blue and I'm the red. And you can immediately see that he is quicker. So the higher up, that speed on that side, and we've got distance along the bottom. And you can immediately see he is quicker than me. And it's immediately obvious that I am slowing down more than he is, slowing down later than he is. And so already you can say that would explain the difference. And below, you've got the time difference. And this is the time delta T, his lap time versus my lap time through this section. And you can see this is where he is gaining his 0.4 of a second. And it's all lined up. So you can actually see that he's gaining that mainly on the way in to the corner, mainly on the entry. And that kind of correlates with what you can see from the speed trace. Two other things you can look at is the steering and the brakes. So I've taken that from that donut chart, I've stretched those out, and now they're on our elongated chart with distance. And so the first one is the steering. You can actually see that both of us are turning in at about the same time. He seems to be turning in maybe a little bit more than me, but not too much. And so if you look at that, my red line here, so going through into there, that's just me sort of turning into the thing. And see this little dip there? That is what we saw in the video. That's the little correction. So I'm still turning, but just had a little moment. And then pretty smooth coming out the other end. And so he is turning about the same time as me, turning a bit more. So maybe taking a slightly tighter line, but our lines are very similar. And then he's sort of doing a little bit more with the wheel through the corner, and then he's exiting. The line is pretty similar. So where's the difference? Well, we've already seen it alluded to in the speed trace, but here we go. It's in the braking trace. Above the line is going faster, below the line is slowing down. And here you can see that I start braking about here, and then about 50, 60 meters later, he has started braking. And so his peak is lower, and this gradient. So what that means is that I'm coming off the brake and I'm more progressive on the brakes. He's more aggressive and braking harder. That's what those two mean. That's why the shallow angle shows it was slow onto the brakes, and he's more hitting the brakes quite firmly. So that's quite interesting. What you can also see is that my red line goes above the line here. Can you see that? And it's above the line more than his at this point. And so that means I've actually got a better exit than he has. So I'm on the throttle, so I'm accelerating more than he is on the exit of the corner. Below this, you can see the combined G. So this is when you put the top two together. And what you're really looking for is a nice smooth mountain over the top, with steep sides and a smoothness at the top. And both of us have got this wobble at the top. His is a little bit more than mine, but he's going a lot quicker. But you can see his sides are more upright. So that's really quite interesting. In summary here, you can say we're steering on the same line, but he's braking later and harder than I am. So that's what's going on. But as a little bonus, I'm also going to add the throttle to this chart, because this is something we've got logged in the car as well. You can actually see something here. So if you just look at the blue line, so 100% is when it's at the top here, and you know where I've got the cursors at 94.84. Okay, so when it's down to 0, you've come off the throttle, and when you're coming back on, it's coming up, and it's a percentage. What's really interesting here is if you look at Scott's, is that he starts slowing down, yet you can see he's still pretty much full throttle. So what's going on? There's only two ways you can do that, is brake or steer. He's not steering, or not very much, not enough to cause it to slow down that much. So he must be braking. So what he's also doing in this corner is he's started to touch the brakes. So that's what's going on.
Fantastic
As
stuff,
a little bonus.
Samir, that is really quite detailed information there. I mean, we had a chat the other day about all this, didn't we? And how it really will develop a driver. And we're talking about getting to that upper limits. I mean, tell us more about all of this. First of all, how did you get involved in wanting to get more out of data?
So I'm an engineer, as I say, and I race at a club level too, and so I've got that professional, exposure to the analytics and the data, and then the sort of the club environment where the last thing we seem to have time for is to sit on a laptop and try and work stuff out. And so it was a case, well, how can we, take the level of data that's available at a club level, which is a lot lower than in a professional environment as well, and still get some value out of it. So, really, Your Data Driven is about trying to help the club racer remove any kind of doubt about setting up their car or using data. A lot of people spend a lot of money on data. That's why I focused on that today. But, you can spend a lot of money on this equipment, but there's a number of people who maybe never take the SD card out, never look at it, or it's too busy, or they think, well, what's the point of looking at the data, So, because the session is finished, right? So I was like, well, how can I help people see that there is some value there, and start to remove some of the doubts that people have and the questions that people have about racing that can be answered with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those. Whenever I've to be honest with you, so much of it has been I don't understand it, and difficulty of understanding the software, how that works, and how I can drag up my couple of laps that do work and which ones coincide, and then it was a case of how for me, I was all about improving it when I'm in the car, because that's what matters. When I'm looking at the data, I'm understanding it, but it's trying to take that into the bit of the car. So most drivers, probably like me, were like, right, all I want is inside the car is the box that with my telemetry, and it tells me whether I'm up or down in the lap. And that is great, but you are still completely misguided. You still need to understand where you've gone quicker and why you've gone quicker, and then that's when you can start to make the greater gains and be consistent and everything else.
Yeah, so the goal is just to have a plan, isn't it? Like, so I race well, right? So this is, so I get that, and also I'm a bit guilty of being like over analytical in the car, and it actually slows me down, because I feel it. I'm sort of, I have to do this thing. My friend Ross Bentley says, drive stupid, and you have to park your analytic brain somewhere else. But at the same time, you're just trying to use that stuff to give you a clear guidance. So you'll see at the end of that little analysis thing, what it boils down to is that Scott is braking 60 meters later than me, and then we do a back-to-back on the video, and it's like, that's what 60 meters looks like. So when I'm back in the car, I don't have to worry about 60 meters. I just have to go, right, I've got a new reference marker. I'm going to use that, and I know it's going to work because I've looked at the numbers. And so you're trying to you do go from don't understand it to being overwhelmed to then, and the key bit is to distill it back into something simple that you can just go out with your plan. The kind of conversation you have when you don't have data, it's like, is that corner third or fourth gear? They're the kind of conversations you have. If you're unsure, this just gives you that an answer that is based on engineering rather than opinion. So yeah,
exactly. Well, I can think of numerous times when I raced about 2 years ago in the R400s in the Caterhams, and I had Darren Burke, and he overlaid my lap with his. Now, when you started looking at it, and he was like, 0.2 faster than me into the first corner, and you kind of think, right, well, that's just nothing. That's, what is that? And then when you overlay the images and start really looking at it, as you say, like braking 10 meters late, and then when you understand that, and then you get to Paddock Hill Bend and you think, I don't know if I feel comfortable braking 10 meters later. So it's,
Well, I totally get that. And so there's two things there. It's like, for me personally, I've got two problems. I've got, well, a number of problems, but in terms of racing, I've got two problems. I've got, like, I don't know how to go quicker because I'm not at the front, and yet I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah.
And so if I can solve the problem of, at least I know what, if I do this, I will be on the pace, is a different problem to, can I actually do it? Am I brave enough? Yeah. So for me, it sort of it helps me, and I think it helps a lot of other people, once you see it simplified, to say, right, okay, just do that if you can, because that's what you need to do. But equally, it flips the other way, because sometimes you're pushing on a corner or something, or in a braking zone, and there's really no time there. And so you can actually dial it back, and just knowing where you could dial it back on that risk factor is really important, because then when you translate all of this is just driving around in a circle, right? So you translate that back into a racing environment where you're actually competing against other people. It's like, well, where do I need to push, and where can I be conservative because it's not going to cost me anything and it's safer, and they might make more of a mistake if that, you know what I mean? There's this kind of knowledge that you kind of bake into your head that all comes from the data, but it's just helping you become a better driver.
Yep, definitely. But I always, again, going back to my, days of old when I first started racing, and it was almost learning that, you watch the Formula One and it's brake power, and there's nothing in between. But then when you start actually properly analysing it, there's that wait period in between where they're waiting for the car to balance itself out, position the car into the right area, and then bang out, go straight out the corner. So again, there's so many things that knowledge is power, isn't it? And certainly speed in this respect, from listening to Si McNally from the Power Max Racing earlier. Look at the information of just setting up the dampers and the work that goes into that. That's all knowledge, and that obviously what equates to making those small margins.
Yeah, I mean, the other question that sometimes people have is, like, is data for me now? Right? Because so a lot of people, in your audience today will be, maybe they're not racing, or they're thinking about going racing for the first time, or thinking about using data. And it's like, are they novice? They might be novice drivers, and like, well, is data for me, or is it going to be a distraction? And equally, you might have a professional driver who might be like super successful and never looked at a data trace. Unusual these days, but it still might be the case. And so you just have to think, well, how can I use this tool to help my goal and my ability right now? And I think all of these things can contribute, particularly I think at a novice level, you can remove that uncertainty. You can look at the trace and you just go, look, there is more time on the brakes here. Just press the brake pedal harder.
Yes.
But believe me, it will stop, and they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, try it, and then we'll see it. And then, it's about breaking that all these little components down and getting a feel for it as quick as you can. And then that's at the novice level. And at the other end, it's a case of, well, how do I find that 10th? Or if I take that corner and it's like, should I V that corner, or should I trail brake in there, or should I do what Scott's doing in this example, which is he's actually left foot braking, and it helps the pitch of my car, helps the pitch of my car, which means he's quicker, but he's also safer. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I can certainly believe that. Yeah, it's all it's such, it feels like it's a black art, but I don't think it is a bigger black art than it needs to be. And I think it's kind of like understanding a lot of the main principles, And
I'll be honest with you, that's the thing from you ask about why you're data driven. I'm an engineer, so I'm kind of used to this stuff. It's been my day job, and so. But I do appreciate that I'm racing with people who have never looked at stuff. And to be honest, the last time they looked at maths and numbers and squiggly lines like that, it was like, just makes them feel, oh, that's a horrible physics class from school, and I hated it, and I never want to go back there. And so the idea behind Your Data Driven is to help those people understand, or at least have a glimpse, start to see, right, okay, this is how it can help you in a much more accessible way. Yeah,
agree.
Fantastic.
That's the idea. I mean, if just to be a bit more clear cut with it. I mean, there are a lot of paddock cup champions, I call them. The fastest in the paddock, but then you get out on track and they're like actually, you're not flat through there at all. You know what I mean? So if you don't believe, if you get sucked into this, like I'm flat out everywhere, it's like, no, you're not actually.
Well, I'll tell you a very quick story. In the first year I did race caterhams, and we did a race. I can't remember it was a Kerbera. It was a sprint race.
Oh, yeah.
And the first corner, this guy came up to me. I was leading the way, and he came up to me and said, "How did you take that corner?" And I thought, well, I'm not going to tell you what I do. So I said flat out, just thinking that he understood I was joking, and he went flat out and spun and hit the wall. So again, it's one of those things where his first thought was to take my information and chuck it straight in and do it. So, you know, again, if you can build off the data, he could have probably taken the next corner a bit quicker, then chipped away at it, and then he would have realised that he would have understeered, oversteered, or whichever one, and realised that he couldn't have taken it flat out. So again, you know, hearing, you know, hearsay isn't the information you need to take on board. It's the proper data analysis in order to really move you on safely. You know, is the big thing.
Samir, before we close this out, didn't you have an offer or something as well that you wanted to tell everybody about?
Yeah, so today I've got a bit of a sort of 5-in-1 bundle offer for people. So on the site, there's, you know, here it is. You've got a full masterclass where I compare myself with Scott for the full lap, not just that one corner. There's a data analysis course for beginners, and it is designed for beginners who've never done anything and who hated physics and maths before. And so literally we go through from the beginning in 3 distinct modules over about 4 or 5 hours of online lessons. And it'll take you through, you know, starting from zero all the way through with a logger that you probably already got, and how to get the most out of the data that you've got with that, and form a plan based on some of the work I've done with Olympic coaches over the last few years. And then to complement that, there's some engineering tools, some little calculators. So there's one there on gear changing. So when do you change gear? On the red line or whatever. So you can actually work this sort of stuff out for precisely. And so you put your engine, your torque curve in there, and it gives you precisely when to change gear up and down for each gear. And a couple of things on tyres. It's all about tyres, isn't it, racing? Both how to set your tyre presses perfectly every single time you go out, even if there's a stagger on the circuit and it's odd. And also how to interpret your tyre temperatures, so you can look at, you know, these fundamentals about under and over inflation. I'm doing that because of the camber. You know, have I set the camber right? Am I getting the temperatures I expect? Are they even? How can I use that to tune some of my handling balance, that kind of thing? Before you start like changing springs and dampers and things like that, like where are the tyres and where's the balance on the tyres? So those kind of tools are there. So it's a little bit of a bundle. Everyone can have a look at that. And yeah, hopefully they find it valuable.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, Samir, thank you so much for your time today.
Hi, Chris Dawes here. I've stepped away from the commentary box for a change, and I'm in front of the camera because this time I'm talking about my business, Open Doors Training. Founded by myself as a project of passion because I felt so lucky that I get paid to do the things I do now. Commentating, hosting awards, voiceover artist, TV, radio, podcasts, live shows, you name it, all of those things are an absolute privilege. Especially when I came from someone who was paralysed by fear when I had to present at university and when I first went into business after graduating. But thankfully, I got accused of making IT entertaining when I was in my sales and marketing role. I know, not that easy, but I'm proud of that one. And that's what really was the trigger, enabled me to carry on with all the different things I do now. I want to now help others open doors that they may not yet know exist. And you never will know exist unless you put yourself in a position where you can be heard. Whether that's in business, in public sector, in sport, all of it is the same. If you're silent, no one will know you exist and how good you are at things. You've got to put yourself in a position where you open those doors, at least so that you can knock on the doors and they know you are there. So that is what we do here at Open Doors Training. It's not about creating blueprints of presenters or media darlings or whatever it may be. It's about unlocking you. Instead of being the contained version of you, we want to get 110% of you. You probably exaggerate it by 10%. I'm sure I'm not like this when I'm at home on the sofa. The wife would kill me. But it is about still being you. And that is what we work on within all of our training. So come on over, opendoorstraining.co.uk. Let's have a conversation to see how we may be able to assist you going into, hopefully, a better year in 2021.
So my name's Tom Ingram. I'm competing in the British Touring Car Championship with Team Toyota GB. So the BTCC is one of the toughest championships around. There's so many quick drivers. So to get the edge, you've got to be looking for any little millisecond of improvement. So whether that be from training hard at the gym or having the best kit around, you've got to find the edge any way possible. So the thing I love about the Walero products the most is the temperature regulation. And not only does it regulate my temperature and keep me cool when it's really hot, but when we're testing in the middle of winter, it keeps me warm as well. The feel of these is amazing. They're so soft, you know, you could wear this to bed and be more than happy. So the lower under has really helped my performance and reduce the effects of the heat on my body and the heat fatigue that I'm finding. That's where I'm finding a big improvement. So over the course of it doesn't matter if I'm testing, it doesn't matter if I'm racing, I'm just not feeling quite as fatigued as I would have been without it.
Performance Box Touch is not only a super accurate performance meter, it can also be used as a sophisticated predictive lap timer, using GPS rather than distance to allow you to accurately compare how your current lap time compares with your fastest, corner by corner. Quick and easy to install, it automatically identifies the circuit you are driving on and loads the relevant track maps from our extensive database. Using a performance box for the first time, VW Classic Championship racer, Dan Rose, talks us through how he benefited from the system's bright delta speed LEDs on track.
Yeah, a few times you'd go in and basically it would come up green, so you thought, yeah, and then mid-bend it was really sort of pushing on a bit, and you'd come out and you was red, so you had to get the balance right of going in and getting the green going in and the green coming out, so you knew that was the best way through there.
Using a lap timer mode, Dan was able to monitor how modifications to his car affected his performance on track.
Like changing the roll bars, we could see that we're a couple of seconds slower straight away and that certain areas it's not working. And then when you flick back, it's working and it shows up on the times and also in your sectors. So the predictive lap times really work.
Given a quick lesson on the Circuit Tools data analysis software to pinpoint exactly where time is being lost and then going through his data from the day, Dan said,
Looking back at the data now, we're a bit further on in the day, we can see that certain lines worked, certain lines didn't. Carrying a bit more speed into the first bend seems to have given us a bit more pace. And also we can look at different sectors where in a couple of laps I was quicker, but actually putting all those sectors together so that they work, which we've looked at, and then we'll go back out and have another go. But so far we've gained 2 or 3 seconds throughout the day, which has really worked well with us. So when we come back racing we should be up there.